my name is Karen Campbell. This is my drawing channel here on YouTube, and I'm in the middle, well, I'm the third way through a 12-part series on drawing women of the world in a really fun, whimsical style. First week, I did a Native American. Last week, I did an Indian woman, and this week, we're going to do a fiery Scottish redhead. So we're gonna have 12 weeks of drawing women from all over the world, and I'm going to be publishing a book at the end of this series. And I want your work to be featured as well. If you're interested in sharing your rendition of today's lesson, all you need to do to find out more details is go to KarenCampbellArtist.com, click on Get Published, read through the submission requirements, and email my friend and assistant, Taylor McLean, your version of this lesson. And I want you to be creative, gosh darn it. Use different mediums to color her in. If you're feeling inspired, you want to change up the hairstyle, or you want to use some different colors, or you want to do it in watercolors or acrylics, or change it up to make it your own, I would love to see those especially. So head over to KarenCampbellArtist.com for more details, and I will be featuring 4 projects per lesson. So that's a lot of chances to be entered to be featured in one of my books. If you don't know, I've authored many art books, and this will be one great one to add to my growing collection, and I would be honored if you would join me there. So without further ado, let's get on to today's lesson. All right, I'm working on my favorite cardstock, which is really slippery. I'll link it in the description box for you. And we're starting by doing just a whole bunch of ovals to kind of get warmed up. I'm really quickly just sketching in the volume of the hair because it's humongous on top, and it's also hiding the top of the oval of the head. So I'm just sketching it in really quickly just to give it the depth so I can kind of eyeball where the oval is, because the top of the oval is embedded somewhere in the hair of the reference. So what the oval that you're seeing is actually like smaller a little bit. So you really want to, usually that horizontal line that I'm drawing now is smack in the middle, and I've raised it up a tiny bit to compensate for the fact that there's so much hair there. Then halfway between the eye line and the chin is the nose line. And then when you divide that in half again, that's the mouth line. Now I'm just popping in that vertical. And on this particular girl, she's tilted slightly. So I was lining up my pencil to show you what's straight up and down. And then her head is cocked just ever so slightly like that to one side, just tiny. But when you do her neck, your neck is actually going to be going straight down, and that kind of accentuates just a little bit of the angle. Now I'm highlighting here how contoured her face is. It's so beautiful. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a bump out at the eye line, just tiny bit. And then it's sculpted in as you get down to the nose. So we're going to come out at the eye line, and then we're going to bring that side part in just a little bit. And then it bumps out again to the mouth line, where it then switches directions again, and then it swoops down to the chin. And at the chin, she really has like its own little space. So I'm drawing a circle there to represent like the ball of the chin. Now I kind of over sculpted her face shape, so I'm kind of just sketching to make it not quite as dramatically defined, but she has a beautifully contoured face, and that's what I'm trying to kind of nail down before we get much further into the details. Now the right side of her face is really all covered up by her hair, so we don't need to do that careful sculpting on the right, just on the left. And I'm just kind of quickly penciling in that first wave of hair. And I recommend you doing the same, otherwise it kind of feels like lopsided because we did one side and not the other. All right, so now we're gonna rough in the ovals for the eyes. 1, 2, 3. They're good and spread apart here. And then we're gonna do the same for the nose. And then I'm also going to add another placeholder for the nose because she has like a wider bottom. I'm kind of seeing this shape, so I'm actually just going to draw it in. I'm not going to end up, those lines are going to disappear, but as far as like placeholders, I'm going to have this. And then her mouth is super tiny, and she has a very long lip dip. This the lip tip. This is a very long space, so her lips are actually super thin. And this is the kind of things that I love doing these projects, because you start doing these little faces and tweaks. Like, I've never drawn a face with a big distance between here and not a very exaggerated, I think it's called a fulcrum, but I like to say lip dip because it's way more fun. She actually has an uber skinny whimsical neck. Yes, naturally. So fun. So I'm going to put that in here. And like literally the whole rest of this is going to be hair, 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 hair. So fun. So I'm just going to really quickly sketch the outlines of some of the hair because it's such an integral part of her face. We have the widow's peak. I had to bring down her hairline a little bit in the front because I made her forehead too large. And then I'm just sketching in the curves, like the inside curly pieces that go on either side of her face, and then we're going to resume fine-tuning all the facial features. In 2 seconds, I just wanted to rough those in. All right, now it's time to fine tune the facial features. So the first thing we're gonna do is, starting in our ovals, we're gonna make the little shape of the tear duct, which is like a little hook. And then we use the ovals truly to know where our limits are at the top and the bottom of the eye. And overhead, she has this really beautiful eyelid crease. So you're gonna draw that in. There's a space that almost looks like an eyebrow, but it's not, it's just the crease of her eyelid, and I'm just taking note there of where her iris is sitting. Now her eyebrows are set back quite a ways. Normally they're lined up with the tear duct, but hers are actually start over a little bit more. So just make sure you leave a space there. And then when I'm doing the other eye, I try to make them match. I never do one eye fully. I always kind of develop them at the same time. That helps them stay even. So we have the little hook for the tear duct. And then again, we really use that oval to set our boundaries so our eyes don't look too wide. Drawing in a little wet line there at the bottom. That's where her eyelash is going to come out of. And then we're putting in the eyelid over top, leaving spaces on either side. And again, those eyebrows are really set back. I have actually I've ever seen eyebrows that weren't lined up with the tear duct. So that was kind of interesting observation. I hadn't seen that before. Now these I'm just drawing as kind of more guidelines so I can start wrapping my brain around where the little bit of shading is going to go. So I'm just kind of, it helps me see and understand the true proportions of her face. And then it's getting a little crazy in there. So I'm just taking a minute and erasing the guidelines and trying to clear up any extraneous lines using my favorite Vanish eraser. Does a really good job erasing off of this cardstock. Now I'm noticing right away that her eyes are actually too far apart. So there's 2 ways that you can fix this. There's 3 ways actually. Number 1 is you could actually erase the eyes and start over and put them closer. The second option is to make them a little bit bigger. And the third option is what I'm doing, which is where I'm actually extending the reach of the eye. So rather than making the whole eye bigger, I'm actually just drawing out the angle and making like super extending the tear duct part of it. Now I've never used this before, but actually at the end I was actually really happy with the results. So I didn't want to do this because my pencil lines are pretty dark, so I didn't want to erase it all because I knew that it would not, my eraser wouldn't be able to pick up all of the graphite enough, and then it would leave a trace of graphite. And then when I went to color in her skin tone, which is super light, I would always see those lines behind. So this was the safest way for me to make that adjustment. So obviously extending the tear ducts will cause me to have to extend my eyebrows a little bit more just to make sure they're in the right spot. And then again, I'm super lightly sketching in the nose bridge. Now I really need to emphasize, I do not draw nose bridges, and you should not either. This is really a guideline for me to make sure the nose is lined up and to make sure that her proportions are correct. But those will be erased later on. And then she has these adorable little nostrils, like teeny tiny nostrils. And then we have the little, I call them just parentheses on either side, which are the sides of the nostrils. Now, super interesting observation on this face is that she has almost no kind of lip dip, which is called the fulcrum that's above the lip that connects the nose and the mouth. Super interesting. It was also her mouth is actually dropped down quite. There's a really large space between her nose and mouth, which I love because it really just shows you how much faces can change from person to person, how much variation they are. So it's super cool. She has very, very thin top lip and a little bit fuller bottom lip, but overall she has pretty thin lips. And then her chin really has that kind of ball at the bottom. It's pretty well defined. So I'm putting in that circle just temporarily to help make sure that I'm having that same shape represented at her chin at the bottom of the face oval. All right. So next stop, just fine tuning this. She really has like this super sculpted, amazing jaw structure, face structure. I don't even know what the word is, but yeah, super cool facial features. We can erase this circle, erase some of this. And actually the bottom lip almost looks like it comes under here because this shadow is like pronounced. So we could even just barely kind of have it coming up in the center of the bottom lip, which again, these differences are just like, they're just so barely there. They're just the most subtle shifts, and it completely transforms the faces. And this is why I've always been obsessed with drawing faces, because you make one thing and you have a totally new person staring back at you. Like, how cool is that? Super cool is the answer. All right, so let's just sketch in a little bit more volume of the hair because we're almost getting ready to color her in. So I like to do general outlines and break out big masses of hair into smaller sections. So we really want like the overall shape, which that's like the outer edge I just sketched to the right. And then we have some subdivided sections within that. I never draw every strand. I just ain't got time for that. So we're going to do the big overall volume and then the subsections within. Now this is where the whimsical stuff comes in, because you really can make this as whimsical as you want. And I just take a lot of artistic license when it comes to hair because it's so much. So I just break it down really quickly. I'm using a circle template to place the irises. And if you notice, they're tucked up under that upper lid. The pupils are very tiny. And there's white space under that iris. So iris placement here is super important to making her look like her when she's all done. And then we're just going to erase the extra guidelines and get ready to color her. So starting off with the lightest marker color you can find, or the lightest colored pencil that you can find, we're going to cover the entire area of her face with a super light skin tone. This has a peach undertone rather than a pink one, just because that, according to my reference, that's kind of what it appeared to me. And you need to do it really even strokes, and you need to pick out your colors before you start coloring her in. So there's no surprises. You have a game plan. Always pick 3 to 5 colors of the same value or same color, and then just pick 3 to 5 shades of it, and that will give you the best success. And then we're going to start on layer 2. So with your very next shade, you're going to go around the hairline, on either side of the nose bridge, around the eyes, under the bottom lip, and under the neck. And that's just about as deep as shading as we are going to go. Hang in there with me. You'll see how all those streaks go away in a bit. So at this point, I want to start introducing a little bit more of a pink color, because she's a bit orangey. We still have a lot of orange left to go. Excuse me. So this is actually like a peach. Now, truth be told, I thought it was lighter than this. And when I started, I was like, oh boy, that's a little bit dark. So I end up just kind of saying, okay, well, I started with this. Now I'm going to need to work with sort of the quote unquote accident that I just made. So I'm just kind of recommitting, and I have to pivot a little bit here because I didn't plan on going in with this dark shade. So I end up really putting it just kind of everywhere. Because that's just what happens. Sometimes if you make a mistake, you have to really run with it and learn how to be flexible when you're doing your artwork, because otherwise you'll just be in a constant state of freak out. So this was the wrong color at first. It all worked out in the end. So 2 things are going on right now. 1, I'm approaching the ugly stage, and 2, I just had a whoops go out from under me and I'm just carrying on. So I'm just saying, I just pretend like I meant to do that. And I'm saying, okay, now what do I do? So I just continue shading and covering the whole face. Now there's a lot of cool tones in the reference as well. So I'm using a really light gray to add shading in her eyes, around the whites of the eyes, and just on either side and around the eyes as well. So people that are this pale tend to have like a blue undertone sometimes. I know in my own skin, I mean, I can see all of my veins and they look blue. So this is essentially kind of what's happening here, but it also adding a little bit of a really cool gray like this. And you can also use blue or purple for the same thing. Just gives it a little bit more depth. Now I'm adding just the tiniest darker shade around the eyes and on the mouth, just 1 tiny shade down. You can even use the same color and just go over your areas when you're using alcohol markers. And sometimes that's enough to give you like a little bit of shading and blending. And I'm having a total fun with the eyes, just adding different greens. Because there's just green eyes and red hair is just such a rare combination. It's not so much for redheads, but just in terms of world populations, there's not that many of them. So that's why I'm super excited to include this in my Whimsical Women series. It's very cool. And she has a lot of freckles that we're going to be putting on the end. And I know freckles can be kind of scary, so I'm happy to do this with you. So I'm just adding different shades of green, kind of specking them in there. No matter what eye color you're using, it's good to you can add dibbles and dabbles, and you can change up so dark shades and light shades, so the result is much more multi-dimensional and multicolored than you would normally see. So, you would see on a real human. So her shade of hair is red, or in real life that is actually orange. So I want you to do the same thing for the hair that we did for the skin, which is pick out 3 to 5 shades, starting all the way from light to super, super dark, and we're going to go one by one. So I'm starting with the dark brown, and that's as many as I'm going to go. And now there's a million ways to do hair, but I chose this way and I'm happy with the result. I actually had not tried this way before, and that is using those outer few wavy sections. I'm going in and just alternating my shades of orange and keeping those waves consistent no matter what section that I'm in. So I started with super dark here. This is like a light orange. And again, I'm just make sure you keep the undulation of the waves consistent throughout and use really wide bands. I do not have patience to draw every strand. This is probably the most strands I've ever drawn, but I'm using like the thick part of the markers to cover as much ground as I can. And I'm loosely basing it on the curves that I see in the reference. But like, this is again where the whimsical is a saving grace, because you're like, close enough. You get the idea. It's wavy hair. And the important part for this one, doing all the shades, is just to keep going. It feels like you're in there for 100 years drawing waves. Trust me, it does. But if you keep alternating your shades and just keep going and keep making sure, the biggest thing is to make sure you're starting all the way at the root every single time and then going from root to tip, You have to always start back at the beginning, or your lines don't make any sense, or your lines have to start at the very least, they have to start like from the head. So even if you start further down, they need to emanate from the head only. So don't have strands that start halfway and then continue down. And then as you can see, and this is an awesome demonstration of how time-lapse can be super helpful, because you don't want to sit here all day, I'm sure. And if you do want to sit here all day, the real-time version of this is available for my Fun Fab Drawing Club members over at Awesome Art School, which is my drawing club, so that they always have access to both in case you do really want want to do line by line, you absolutely can. But you just have to keep going, and eventually this becomes all filled out. But because the strands are super thick and varied, it kind of goes actually pretty quickly. And just the big important thing is to keep varying the colors that you're using. And that way it's not just like a mass. And that way it naturally and by default kind of leaves some areas that are highlighted. There's, again, a million ways that you can draw hair, even in markers. And also, obviously, it varies widely depending on what mediums you're using. And this is the most strands as I've ever drawn. I actually am super happy with the results. I think it's a little bit darker, more auburn color than the actual model, who was actually quite a vibrant orange haired girl. But I was still happy with it. I mean, my projects, guys, I'm only human, are not perfect every single time. So I was trying something new, and I was actually pretty happy with it. So now onto the freckles part, which is really fun. The key to freckles is to, 1, just get over your fear and put them on the face. And number 2, make sure that the color of the freckles is literally like just one teeny tiny shade darker than the skin color. It's way less scarier if you're working in a skin tone that's like pretty much exactly the same as the actual base skin tone that you're using. It's a lot less scarier than you would think. And when you actually stare at a reference or person's face with freckles, you realize very quickly that like they're beautiful. And so it's an honor to be able to speckle her face as she was born. And I just love it. And I didn't find it scary once I started going, and once I really started staring at my reference picture and realized that's our beautiful freckles. Let's put them on there. It would be an honor to decorate your face. And so as you can see too, this is a regular, more of a beige tone, and it's varying from the first 2 tones I used on her skin, which were, one was very peach and the next one was very pink, and this one is more of a neutral beige. And I'm using it as extra shading, again, around her eyes, the hairline, the nose bridge, under the chin, and under the lower lip. If you notice, when I'm adding shading, it's always in the same areas. You don't explore new areas of shading on a face. You look at your reference photo. This one was very challenging because there's very little contrast. It's actually the less contrast you have in a picture or a reference, the more difficult it is to draw, interestingly, because there's not much variation there. When it's easy and obvious to see, it's fun and easy to add in those differences because they're so blaringly obvious. So this one was really subtle, which makes it really difficult. So the wonderful thing about using markers is that you can go in with colored pencils and really add a lot of extra dimension. You can fix a lot of mistakes. You can add more depth. You can go in and add colors, and it's a much slower, safer way to go in and add on top of what's already there. So you do it very slowly. Just a little bit on top, right, for the lips. And it's not like the markers are like, you are all in, you're committed, and you can't do anything about it. And so I love colored pencils on top of Copics. I also love them on top of watercolors for the exact same reason. So if it's not giving me enough of a boost, I'm like, all right, let's get this party started a little bit more. Then I can go back and you can actually just put the markers right on top of the colored pencils. As long as your colored pencils are not oil-based, you can go in on top. So some manufactured, some brands, you won't be able to do that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I think the polychromos ones are oil-based, so you wouldn't want to use those. But these, I'm using Prismacolor, and they're just fine to do that. So now I'm adding this is a real pinky peach, because in the reference, I'm really noticing her makeup color is this beautiful pinky peach. So again, I started out with
the colored pencil almost as like a little test drive. And when I wanted more of it, then I'm kind of ready to commit, and then I can go in with my marker. It's a little scary. It was a little much. And then I end up using the color pencil again to color correct that, because I can go in with then a skin tone, a light skin tone, and over the marker, and it will help knock back that too dramatic pink that I just added. So you can use it to correct your markers in a lot of different ways.
Her lashes are like so badass. First of all, it's like heavy here. And same thing with over here. It's like thin and then heavy. And then her lashes really like go up. That's one of my bad things I don't like about doing my lashes, is sometimes they do that. But in this case, that's really they look like. And we have the little pupil in the center. And then she really does have very dark outer rings to this. So we can do that. Same thing over here. So my battery is about to die. And then this, on this lower lash, it's like just makeup with like tiny lashes. It's like in the middle. And these are really like this. Going all over. Pulling my whimsy card. Give her a little drama there with her eyeballs. This has been the hardest one for me so far. And then her little nose. And then again, just across the eye, or not the eye, the lip line. So the only other black. I'm going to make her lip go up just the tiniest bit on the edges, and then look what effect that has. It's like all of a sudden she's a little less like poopy pouty. Now, there is no black in the photograph. I'm doing this as a Hail Mary move because I'm not super excited about how her hair looks. So I am deviating from the plan. In hopes that I can become happy with the final product. And so far, I'm kind of happy that I'm doing this because, yeah, I was not happy before. So it lends it an air of consistency. So a great way to blend alcohol markers together is to actually go back to like the lightest or second lightest color, and you can really move it all to all the places, and it kind of helps blend. So this was the very first color I added. Oops, I just dragged her corner of her lip up her face. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but it does help blend everything together. I can't believe I just did that. What an idiot. Okay. So again, you can kind of take this and it just blends all the things together. Kind of getting rid of that random, not accurate highlight. Yeah, blends it all, makes it much more seamless. So that's a great way to help ease that transition. Now this pink I added it's like a little too much. So I can go in with my colored pencil and like kind of add in some shading if you want to. I love colored pencil over the Copics because it adds, it just adds another layer of texture, which I think is very pretty. So I'm gonna add it here and see if I can ease that transition. So it's not like marker, because you shouldn't see that big marker line. So that definitely helps. See how it eases that away.
So we can continue on, and you can do as much or as little colored pencil work as you want to. I will list the supplies in the description box for you, but also please know that like you can use whatever art supplies you want. These exercises and these lessons and projects are really all about drawing, and so the color part is more for the demo, and I would love you to just, use your own creativity. I actually just ordered a bunch of Crayola, like kids skin tone markers and crayons and colored pencils, because I'm going to see what I can do with just super like the cheapest of cheapest art supplies in one of these upcoming lessons. Remember, there's going to be 12 weeks of these lessons. This is week 3. So I have a lot more amazing projects coming up. I have a bunch of references picked out and I'm super excited. And don't forget to I'm just using this is just a little Copic multi-liner to add some finer strands of details and strands of hair and outlining her lips, nose, and also chin. It kind of helps tie it all together. But this is a really cool opportunity if you want to be featured in one of my books. Like I said at the beginning, I have 15 published books, so this will be 16. So I'm super excited to, include you and have some fun people to come play along with and I would love to see your versions of these girls, and you're welcome to use any art supplies you love to finish her off. So I'm adding, this is my favorite part, we're adding the highlights with the paint markers. So as you can see, I added a strip of white right over her pupils and then a dot over to one side. That's all I've done so far. I totally smeared her lip up her cheek. So I'm trying to see if I can fix it with a little colored pencil. It's not working. So, that happens sometimes. I'm just leaving it right there on her face. There's literally nothing I can do. I am not upset about it. It's just happens. And I'm just going to leave it there. There's nothing I can do. So I was going to touch up some of her freckles, but I started to, and then I just kind of left them. I think they're a good level at this point. Adding a little highlights to her eyes. I over smeared that one, so I will correct that with a little bit of pen in a minute. But having just a touch of highlight like this in and around her eyes, and then I wanted more. Again, there was so little contrast on that photo, and I thought, where can we add some highlights even if they don't exist in real life? And usually the nose is one of those places, and the lips and the chin usually get a little something too. So I'm adding a little extra love here in these places, just to, again, the extra little taps of white are what truly bring your faces alive. So please don't skip or shy away from this step, because it can actually create the biggest impact. Again, she had no fulcrum that I could even see on the photo, so I sort of added one and took the liberty of adding one in, and just adding little sparkles just brings turns up the volume on the dimension and brings the character to life. And again, just leaving that smear on her face, that just is what it is. Going back to add a few more freckles. Again, this is just in the same skin tone. When you are doing, and I actually I love the look of the freckles, like when they're accentuated and darker, it just adds to the realism of her, even though this is a very whimsical piece. Though that's real. Those freckles are real. And it was just really cool to be able to highlight them. And I have friends in real life who are freckly, fiery redheads, and it's just 100% adds to their beauty and charm. So I had such a great time on this project. I hope that you will join me in one or all of these 12 lessons. I will be back every single Monday posting these lessons till the end of the year. And all the information on where to post and how to submit your drawings are at KarenCampbellArtist.com. And I will see you here Monday. Click the link on the screen right here, and that will catch you up and we'll let you watch all the episodes of all the lessons that got rolled out. And I'll see you Monday.